In God of War, dragons are some of the most ancient, powerful, and mysterious beings in all the realms. Yet three of them, Fafnir, Otur, and Reginn, stand apart. Not just because they're tied to legendary Norse myths, but because their stories in the games are fragmented, contradictory, and strangely unfinished. These dragons disappear from the narrative in ways that don't quite add up, and then when you look closer, the gaps start to look intentional. So today, we're diving deep into what really happened to the missing dragons and why Santa Monica Studio might be hiding something much bigger. In Norse mythology, dragons aren't just monsters, they're symbols: greed, transformation, doom. But in God of War, dragons take on an even more intriguing role. They're ancient beings caught in the shifting power dynamics of the realms. Most we meet are bound, corrupted, or enraged. But the three we're covering today are different because they were once dwarves, brothers cursed by fate, victims of magic, betrayal, and the consequences of their own flaws. In mythology, they're central figures in the tale of the cursed ring of Andvari, one of the most important preludes to Ragnarok. And in the games, their fates diverge from the lore in ways that raise huge questions. Let's start with Fafnir. In Norse myth, Fafnir is the greedy son who kills his father to protect the treasure, transforms into a dragon, and is ultimately slain by the hero Sigurd. But in God of War, Fafnir is already dead before we ever see him. We only explore the Fafnir storeroom, where his body rests lifeless, strangely intact for a supposedly ancient corpse. Sindri tells us Fafnir became a dragon after succumbing to greed. But here's the first mystery. Fafnir's death never happens on screen, and we never learn who killed him. That's unusual for a character so deeply tied to mythological destiny. Even stranger, Fafnir's soul appears later as a spectral form, still wandering, still aware, still bound to the treasure. So if the dragon's soul persists, what killed the body? Possibility 1. A clash with another dragon. Possibility 2. The curse consumed him more literally than we think. Possibility 3. The dwarves, and even Sindri, aren't telling us everything. But the most compelling theory. Fafnir was killed by someone connected to Odin. Perhaps even by Odin himself, seeking the ring or the treasure hoard. The lack of details is too intentional to ignore. Next is Otur, the brother whose death begins the curse in the original mythology. In the myth, Loki kills Otur while he's in otter form, thinking he was just a normal animal. To pay restitution, the gods have to cover Otur's body in gold, and this gold becomes cursed, leading to Fafnir and Reginn's downfall. In God of War, however, Otur is alive. Not only alive, he's transformed into a dragon. This flips the myth on its head. And yet, despite this massive deviation, we never encounter Otur directly. We only find references, lore entries, and hints from the dwarves. Otur's disappearance is even more mysterious than Fafnir's, because as far as the game presence, he's transformed, he's alive, he's missing, and nobody seems to be looking for him. There's no body, no soul, no confirmation of death. In a world where dragons are constantly chained, hunted, or corrupted, Otur's complete absence is a narrative anomaly. The lack of a canonical death suggests something important. Santa Monica is saving Otur for a future story, a living, unaccounted-for dragon tied to one of the most important Norse curses. That's not a throwaway detail. Quick break. If you're enjoying the deep dive so far, make sure to drop a like and let me know in the comments which dragon you think is still alive. It helps a ton. Finally, we get to Reginn, the brother who, in myth, manipulates Sigurd into killing Fafnir. He's greedy, scheming, and ambitious. But in God of War, Reginn is again portrayed very differently. He's transformed into a dragon like his brothers, but instead of being active and dangerous, he's chained, another dragon imprisoned by corrupted runes. And Kratos frees him. Here's the mystery. Reginn is the only one of the three brothers whose fate we see with clarity. We free him, and he simply flies away. But where does he go? Why doesn't he return to Sindri? Why isn't he mentioned again? Why does Santa Monica leave the thread hanging? Because if Reginn survived, and Otur is missing, and Fafnir's soul still wanders, then the three dragon brothers may not be finished as a narrative element. The biggest missing piece is the Andvari curse, the mythical origin point for the brothers' downfall. In the game, Andvari appears as a talking ring, completely reimagined from the myth, but the curse is softened, almost muted. Why? Because Santa Monica Studios might be deliberately delaying the full curse arc. The tragic chain of events in the myth is too big, too thematically rich, and too tied to Ragnarok to be ignored forever. It symbolizes greed, corruption, and destiny, major themes in God of War's narrative. So if the curse isn't explored in the main Norse saga, maybe it's being saved for a spin-off, an interquel, or a future Craw to /Atreus storyline. The missing dragons are the smoking gun that this story thread is still open. Let's bring all of this together, because once you line up the clues, a clear pattern starts to emerge. The strongest theory is this: the three dragon brothers are being intentionally preserved for a future storyline. Here's why. Fafnir's soul remains intact. Fafnir is dead, but his soul still wanders. Souls in God of War aren't loose ends. If his spirit persists, the character isn't truly gone. That alone signals unfinished business. Otur is acknowledged but never shown. Otur is mentioned multiple times, confirmed to be transformed into a dragon, and then completely absent, not killed, not fought, not found. That kind of omission is almost always deliberate, especially for a character tied to major mythic events. Reginn is freed and allowed to survive. Reginn is the only brother we directly help, and Santa Monica lets him fly away without closure. A surviving, unaccounted-for dragon is basically a narrative invitation for later use. The Andvari curse is only partially explored. The brothers' entire myth revolves around this curse, yet in the game, we're only given fragments. Unresolved mythic threads in this series rarely stay unresolved forever. Santa Monica loves long-term setups. Look at the Giants, Tyre, the Valkyries, plotlines planted quietly, then revisited much later. The dragons fit that same pattern, important enough to introduce, but not important enough yet to conclude. The most likely outcome. The three brothers are poised for some kind of convergence, whether united or in conflict, built around the themes that define their myth, greed, inheritance, and the consequences of power. Picture a future game where Atreus searches for mythical survivors and discovers Otter alive, or where Fafnir's soul finds a new form, or where Reginn returns, torn between gratitude and loyalty. The dragons aren't missing, they're waiting. Their story is still coiled beneath the surface, ready to unfold when the series needs them most. The dragons of Norse myth are more than beasts. They're symbols of transformation, greed, and fate. And in God of War, their stories feel too deliberate, too fragmented to be accidents. Fafnir, Otur, and Reginn, three brothers tied by a curse, three dragons who vanish from the narrative just when things get interesting. Their absence might be the biggest clue of all, because sometimes what the story doesn't show us is what matters most. If you enjoyed this deep lore breakdown, make sure to subscribe to MythMode for more theories, mythology dives, and hidden story explorations across the worlds of God of War and beyond. This is MythMode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.